All right, hi everyone. I'm using this mic for the live stream, so I know you can all hear me. But I think we're going to start with some introductions as people trickle in a little bit more. First of all, hello, welcome to Day Zero. I'm really excited that this is happening. My name is Anna Higgins. I'm the chair for Day Zero. I'm also a summer research analyst at the Internet Society. And first I want to say a few thank yous. First to the Center for Democracy and Technology, to Brian and Maeve who helped us put this event together. Thank you to the Internet Society for sponsoring our materials and our refreshments and the food we're going to have at our reception. Thank you to Dustin and Melinda and the rest of the IGF-USA steering committee for their support. And thank you to Marina, my vice chair, for helping me out and letting me bounce ideas off of her all the time. So I'm really excited that this is happening. To my knowledge, we haven't had a Day Zero in a few years in the US, and other countries have really robust youth IGFs. And so I'm really hoping that this can be the start of a really awesome basis for youth engagement in internet governance in the US. So I really hope this sets a precedent, and I hope that it only grows from here. A few logistics things. The Wi-Fi, I believe it is RMR guest Wi-Fi, and you log in with your email address, I believe is the case. And then also a few other logistics. We're going to start with our panel, and I'm really excited about our panel. And then we're going to go into our breakout sessions, and I'll explain the goals of those when we get to that. And then we'll do a roundtable kind of readout of what we talk about afterwards before our reception. So I think since we're a small group, it'd be really great if we could go around and just do introductions of who we are, what we're working on. Maybe if we're still in school, like where are we at school or something. And so I'll start with you, Marina.
Thanks, Anna. Good morning, everyone. I'm Marina Polachek, and I commuted down here yesterday from Syracuse, New York. And I'm thrilled to be here helping out with the event as vice chair, co-chair. And some of these topics and the organization I currently work for, National Grid in Syracuse, New York. I queried some of the younger, my colleagues there, and the cyber safety resiliency at the infrastructure level, really important for what we do in that organization. Digital inclusion as well with our customers, and then the future of work, especially because of the younger people inside the organization, or your digitization of a workspace, telecommuting options. And thanks for having me, and thanks for coming. It's really appreciated.
All right, good morning. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matt Johnson. I am from New York. I came down here, commuted as well. I work with the International Trademark Association, so I'm very interested in discussing copyright and trademark issues on the internet with you guys. Dustin has been gracious enough to help me volunteer in this, so I'll be helping to organize some of the volunteers tomorrow for IGF-USA. And yeah, nice to meet all of you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Zach Rogoff, and I'm from Washington, D.C. I'm a researcher and advocate focusing on digital rights, and I've done a lot of work on freedom of expression, also some on privacy. Right now, I work with ranking digital rights, so we set standards for telecommunications and internet companies to respect human rights and evaluate them. And in the past, I've been at Access Now and the Free Software Foundation, some other organizations. I'm looking forward to talking with all of you.
I'm just going to stay seated. But I'm Nikki Barassa from the Global Network Initiative. I joined in September, and I won't say what GNI is, but we focus on freedom of expression and privacy issues. My work in particular focuses on different regions outside of the Europe and US. Before that, I was at the Berkman Klein Center, and I helped with research on disinformation, elections, polarization, harmful speech online. And before that, I was at Internews, and I did digital security trainings and localization and a lot of capacity building for CSOs. Now I'm here.
Hi, everyone. Do we actually need the mic? I'm all right. Oh, I'm sorry. So I'm an intern at CDT. My name is Michael. I'm from Italy. I recently graduated from the Fletcher School, so up in Medford, Massachusetts. I study transatlantic affairs, so I'm very interested particularly in issues relating to cross-border data transfers, particularly US-EU data transfers, and particularly cross-border data transfers for law enforcement purposes. I'm embedded in the security and surveillance team here at CDT. Will be until the end of August, so I still have about 4 or 5 weeks in.
Hi, I'm Maeve. I'm also an intern upstairs at the Centre for Democracy and Technology, and I'm on the communications team. I'm actually today is my last day of my internship because on Saturday I have to go back to Ireland. I'm over on a programme. But when I go back to Ireland in September, I'll be starting my 3rd year of biomedical science. But I've really enjoyed my summer learning about all these great initiatives and all this on policy making to do with tech and data and privacy. And I'm really looking forward to today's discussions.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Sheehy, and I work with Nikki at the Global Network Initiative on free expression and privacy issues. I do a little bit of membership coordination with our growing over 60 multi-stakeholder members over the world, some of our external communications, and some spot research tasks. And then prior to GNI, I worked at a journal on landmine action. So GNI has really been my first foray into this space, but I've been there over 3 years now. And I previously volunteered with some social media for a past IGF-USA.
Hi, I'm Nakul Naik. I'm with Chris and Nikki at the GNI, but I'm a Google Fellow there, and so I'll be there only temporarily. I'm not working on anything as such because I'm waiting for Trump to process my visa. I'm originally from India, and I used to work at the Center for Communication Governance at India, so I've been kind of well-versed with this space now.
Hi, my name is Lauren. I also work with Nakul, Chris, and Nikki at the Global Network Initiative. I am an intern, though. I just graduated from American University with a bachelor's in international studies, and previously I was a research assistant in the digital forum at the Center for European Policy Studies.
Hi, I'm Robert Winterton. I am the Director of Communications at NetChoice, and will be speaking as part of the first interactive panel. I have been at NetChoice for, I think, over 1.5 years now, which is kind of weird to say. It's gone really fast, but I've been working in the tech policy space for a few years. I actually moved to the US from the UK in 2015, and I actually did some tech work out there while I was at university. So it's been really interesting over time to see how these issues have developed, and certainly to see in the last few years a growing heat on the tech industry. Just to give you a little bit of background on NetChoice, NetChoice is we are a trade association that seeks to protect free enterprise and free expression online. So while it's been interesting to see that increased scrutiny of the tech industry, it's also made my job much busier and harder. So thank you.
Hi, my name's Emma Alonzo. I'm the director of the Free Expression Project at Center for Democracy and Technology, which is just one floor up. I head up all of our work on free speech issues, so that has to do with First Amendment, Article 10, Article 19, kind of fundamental rights protection, intermediary liability issues, which is a big issue that keeps Rob very busy these days, and things like content moderation and kind of what companies do to manage user-generated content kind of either in response to or outside of legal frameworks. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Thanks, Emma. My name's Marilyn Cade, and it's not true that I helped invent the internet, but I did start using the internet when there were only 10 million users on it. So everything that you're working on today, imagine how unforeseen all of that was when the technology was first being applied. I'll be talking a little bit later. I started my career in a very different line of work, and then worked for AT&T for a number of years, helped found AT&T Computer Systems and AT&T WorldNet. So most of my career has been spent in the high-tech world, even though I did work in the parent company AT&T. And I left number of years ago, and I work primarily with SMEs and business associations in developing countries outside of WEOG.
Hi, I'm Katie Jordan. I'm the Senior Policy Advisor for North America at the Internet Society. Some of y'all might be familiar with the Internet Society's work, and we're very excited to be supportive of this event. But the Internet Society is a global nonprofit that works to ensure everyone, everywhere has access to an open, secure, and trustworthy Internet. And my work in the North American Bureau focuses primarily on the US and Canada, where we do everything from trainings for community networks and community network builds, especially for rural, remote, and tribal areas, to routing security and privacy and IoT security, especially around the standards of IoT. So I'm very excited to work with y'all and to have the conversations this afternoon.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melinda Clem. I'm the co-chair of IGF-USA along with Dustin. I'm also the vice president of strategy for Affilius, which is the world's second largest domain registry. Another hat I wear is vice chair of the Internet Infrastructure Coalition, and that is a group that lobbies and educates regulators and governments on matters relating to primarily security and operations of the Internet infrastructure. I'm currently not a candidate for president in 2020, and I do have a couple of other hats. I'm excited to be here today. I did get started in telco when I finished up graduate school in a different decade. I won't tell you which one. So I've been in sort of this telco and internet space for a long time, and I like seeing other people of that similar age. Excited too.
Hey, I'm Dustin Phillips, and we kind of just did a reverse panel, as you see on the session, and we're, I guess, at the point where we launch into this interactive panel, and my first question was going to make everyone introduce themselves, but that's done, so I'll do myself. I'm co-chair of the IGF-USA along with Melinda, and also executive director of the Washington, D.C. chapter of the Internet Society, and as such, I'm very excited to see people come together and talk about these issues from a perspective of emerging professionals and academics that are going to be working alongside us, and many of them already are, as we can see here. But I would like to see, in terms of how we can perform youth engagement, I'd like to see a lot of you get involved with the IGF-USA process itself, and we kick off each year by opening up a call for topics, followed by a survey, and then participants self-select into groups that will then build out the program that hopefully you will all come and enjoy tomorrow. I know some of you can't make it, but I think that is a great way to get involved and talk about a wide variety of issues, especially as you're figuring out what you might want to focus on. I think some of you have a really good idea already, but I've really enjoyed, being involved with the IGF-USA, and I got involved with the IGF-USA pretty early into my career in internet governance and internet policy, and it has opened up a lot of doors for me and introduced a lot of new topics to me that I may have otherwise not really focused much on. So what I want to do with this great panel that we have, some early career professionals, some mid-career professionals, and some experienced professionals. So I really just want to hear from all of you how you think we can do a better job of bringing in youth to be involved with internet governance and internet policy, and also where you think there's a role, whether that is a process to follow or a particular issue that may be emerging, or any issues that you think that people entering the field today should really be focused on and looking toward. And since we only have one mic, this is just going to self-select the order, and it's just going to go down the line.
All right. Thanks, Dustin. Those are a lot of good questions in there. I think I'll take them somewhat in reverse order. I think for me, and what I've found is that to get people interested, first they have to understand that there's something to get interested in, that this is a fluid environment to some extent, that things aren't set in stone, and that your participation and involvement can actually lead to change. That isn't as clear, I think, with the internet itself as it is in other things, right? When you're young, you know, right, we've got this election coming up, right? I can go volunteer, and you can physically see how that works, you know, whether it's canvassing or you can see promotional materials, you can go to an office and make phone calls or put stamps on envelopes. They still do that. So I just think that that's the first thing, is just letting people know that, you know, there is an environment to shape and make change. And I think I think an avenue for doing that is what Dustin had mentioned. It's probably through issues. It's saying, you know, personalizing it and relating it to someone so that they understand, and just start seeding that very first question of how does that happen, or why does that happen? Whether it's, you know, I'm on this website, well, how did that get created? Where does my data go? How is it handled? You know, just getting that first question that digs into, you know, behind the surface of what happens, I think is a way to get people engaged. And then from there, typically people then ask more questions. And I think that is a great way to get people started.
I would completely agree. I think the thing we most need to do is educate young people that this space exists. I know personally, I kind of stumbled into this job and into this world really by virtue of having a great professor in undergrad who just made me aware that there was an issue here at all. And I think I, like many of my peers at the time, take the internet for granted in a lot of ways, and that I don't take for granted my access necessarily, but I do take for granted all the people that work behind it to make sure that my access is consistent and that it's, you know, safe, and that I have privacy at all in the first place. And so realizing that those things are not permanent, that they are the result of many, many individuals all across the world spending their lives working really hard to ensure that I get those benefits, was step one for me. And I agree, too, that finding your issue area or finding the thing that you care about is equally important. So if privacy is the thing for you, there are a million things that need to get done to make sure that our privacy is protected. There is a role for you there, but it takes caring a lot about it, and it takes dedicating your time, dedicating, you know, yourself to wanting to solve the problems. There's plenty of work to go around. We just have to recognize what that work is.
Thanks. So I'm going to, Marilyn Cade speaking, I'm going to just give you a minute and a half overview of how youth engagement has worked in the past. We haven't actually had Day Zero events. We've had other approaches to how young people of different age categories have participated, including from the very first IGF-USA, which was launched in 2009, when we had a rising junior as one of our main panel speakers. And we also had a partnership with Elan University's Imagining the Internet to have a number of young people. We've done relationships with professors who have incubated the planning of a workshop between two just gathering up students that are interested. In this case, it was Cornell and a group of law students at George Washington U. They incubated the workshop and delivered the workshop, Youth for Youth. Adults were only allowed to observe, and I was the enforcer, so no adults got to talk. That, again, was college age, and under kind of the guidance of a couple of professors who were particularly interested. We had a initiative with a group of PhD students at George Washington who undertook a study and presented a workshop that they had organized. We've done a number of things. We've never actually been able to organize a complete Day Zero event for youth. But now I'm going to say something. I think all of you are rising professionals. So thinking about an issue that would interest you in the IGF, maybe as much about how you were going to be interested in participating actually in the day-long IGF-USA itself. But I also hope you will think about taking a look at some of the examples of the youth initiatives. We just completed the Ghana Youth Initiative. There were over 125 attendees with no funding. And they've done a great report. I just got back from Afghanistan, where I do an IG school, and I do a kids academy, children ages 8 through 15. There's about 20 some youth initiatives. They're all very, very different. And some of them are very issue oriented, very actively around particular issues in their country or in their subregion. Access, of course, affordability, but also safety online. The future of work that Marina mentioned is almost a constant topic in the youth initiatives. And that's very different when you're driving the discussion than when the discussion is being driven by people who are at different stages. So as you think about, if you decide you really are committed to the idea of working toward a broader Day Zero activity for next year, think also about how you catalyze other interested people who aren't perhaps even at your stage of professional development to get involved in the issues.
One of the things that I've noticed about internet governance discussions over the 10 or so years I've been involved in them is that they can get very abstract, and that can be a really difficult kind of thing for anybody to engage in, young or old. But some of the most effective ways that we found at CDT and working with other NGOs to get young people and just people in general involved in caring about internet policy issues is to really drill down on something concrete. So it's much easier to get people engaged on something that's like a campaign about a piece of legislation. Maybe you don't or do want SESTA FOSTA to pass. Maybe you want to push back on SOPA PIPA. Maybe you want to support it. Having something concrete where you can actually say, this is what is being proposed. These are the kinds of outcomes that we're expecting. What do you think about that? Here's something to do. Call your senator, write a letter, do some analysis. That is so much more kind of approachable, I think, for a lot of people than we're going to have really important discussions about the IANA functions transition, and first we need to spend like 45 minutes talking about what the IANA functions are, and then we'll have to spend 45 minutes talking about why we need to transition them and like to what. So if you're looking at sort of recruiting people or bringing more people in, having particular projects or campaigns or whatever it might be, getting concrete, I think is really useful. And then as far as sort of for the people who here are already interested enough to come to a IGF-USA Day Zero event, to get more of a foothold in the internet policy space, one of the things I found most useful in my fairly short career is taking the time to get a couple levels down of expertise in some issue. You don't have to know everything about everything, but if you can drill down and actually know, I think of it as like, several layers down in the outline, or, to a fairly reasonable degree of specificity, something about a current topic, a current debate. When I first started at CDT, COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, was a big deal. The FTC was reviewing their rule, which they hadn't done in a long time. And COPPA is kind of it's an extensive statute. There's a lot of, writing and thinking about it. It's sort of a lot to wrap your hands around, and I knew nothing about it coming into it. But I was tasked with, take the time to dig into, really understand what's going on here, what are the motivations, what are the different implications of the proposals. And once you have that under your belt, it's much easier to get a foot into different discussions, to, participate in different ways. And it sort of differentiates you from people who are only talking at a very kind of high level, almost superficial way about, it's like children's privacy is important or disinformation is bad. Having something that shows you have, little bit, a lot more thoughtful things to say about that, can really help set you apart. And it's very much worth taking the time to develop that sort of expertise.
Yeah, so I was just kind of thinking about what's probably the best way for me to approach this. I have been involved in this kind of space, the IGF space specifically, for a couple of years. This year will be my third and the second that I have been helping organize. And it's a very different space than what I'm used to. And I guess before I get too into why I think IGF is a really valuable route for people looking to get more invested and interested in this space, I'll preface with a lot of my work, a huge portion of my work is about online platforms. I used to work more in telecom, but since being at NetChoice, I've pretty much every day I'm talking about issues, as you mentioned earlier, like Section 230 intermediary liability, to some extent also privacy and antitrust, and a lot of things that impact, and obviously not just the biggest platforms being, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, but also a lot of smaller platforms. So when I speak about these issues, that's kind of where I'm coming from. It's the area I'm now most familiar with. But I think that a lot of the weaknesses in the way that we as a society discuss tech policy is that the rule makers are often not familiar with what they are regulating. And as young people, I think we are in a good position, and I was always told when I was starting in tech policy that it's kind of different than, say, going into energy where you have like oil and gas or defense policy. Yes, obviously working in an industry for a long time will give you experience and notoriety. But the thing about tech policy is often young people are at the forefront of adopting new technologies, which means that often young people have a knowledge base that is maybe not, which is very significant when talking about these issues. So one that leaps to mind is recently the criticism of Libra and Libra coin, obviously what Facebook's getting kind of involved in. And, not saying that there's obviously no way that you can criticize it, but the specific criticism by President Trump, which was that this is, it's very unstable, cryptocurrency is very unstable. Well, specifically about Libra coin, is this a stable coin? The whole point is that it's not unstable, and it probably won't be. Its price won't be. There may be other issues. So, but that's something where maybe young people are in a position to say, well, this is actually something I may only be 3 years into my career, but I've always been interested in blockchain. So maybe a young person there can offer some knowledge that someone who has been in tech policy for 20 years has no idea about. I think another area might be Instagram's change in policy over public facing likes. How many, if anyone here is a prominent Instagram user, you're aware that when you post something, obviously the amount of likes you get is publicly viewable. Instagram's looking and is testing at changing that so that it's not. I think to maybe a US senator with the average age of 61 or 62, that sounds like, okay, what a minor, insignificant change to a platform with so many problems. I think to someone of my age, that actually sounds fairly significant because it's something that most of us actually realize and interact with as a piece of content. The amount of likes a post had is actually kind of major, especially to influencers, especially to young people when we talk about self-esteem issues on these platforms. And the reason I kind of bring up the knowledge that young people have that often those senior to them do not about these services is that I totally agree with what everyone said here about don't be worried about being pigeonholed by picking a specific policy area that you like. When you go through your career, from my understanding, it's more about the skills, the network, and the investment in the wider policy space that is useful. I currently work in Section 230, but maybe one day I will move job to somewhere that doesn't care about platform liability issues. Just because I worked on 230 before, that doesn't mean that I can't quickly learn about another policy area. But at the same time, while also specifying and going into more specific policy area, and this kind of sounds funny to say, but as a young person, don't lose track of one thing that makes you such a useful resource to any tech policy organization, which is you being a young person will probably know more about any new app than any of your bosses will. And routinely I am asked by, NetChoice is fairly small, we're only 3 people, but my, I guess, 2 bosses, Steve who runs the organization and Carl our VP, regularly come up to me and ask how TikTok works or what Snap Maps means. And that's a really valuable resource to have that in-house, someone with both a little, at least, substantial policy knowledge while also actually understanding, oh, like this new service, I actually get it within a couple of days of using it, whereas someone, you know, older than me may struggle, and that's really useful. So yeah, I just kind of, you know, also want to plug the, you're young and that makes you very useful in this space.
This space has a lot of acronyms, and just because you know the acronyms for the specific issue you're working on doesn't mean you know every acronym, and that's completely fine. We are going to use probably 1 million different acronyms that are now native to us, but for me personally, that's a new thing. So if you hear an acronym and you don't know what it means, just raise your hand, and that'll be assigned to us to just say the actual word. So, that's all.
Yes, probably not a bad idea. So the IGF-USA stands for the Internet Governance Forum, United States of America. And it is an initiative that, as Marilyn mentioned, has been around since 2009. We're celebrating our 10th anniversary tomorrow. Hope you can all make it for some cake. But it comes out of the global IGF, which got its mandate out of the World Summit on the Information Society, where there was a need to establish a forum to discuss these emerging internet issues in a way where different stakeholders with different perspectives could come together and have these important discussions without necessarily the pressure of coming up with a binding solution. And one of the great things that has come out of that is this network of national and regional IGF initiatives, which is what the IGF-USA is. And there are all of these different initiatives across the world on a national and a regional level. And recently, within the past several years, that has started to take off, and there's been a lot of coordination. So not only do we have these discussions here in the US and in DC, but we take those discussions and look for similarities and differences with the discussions that are happening in other national IGFs and identify what our priorities are, and we'll discuss those and have sessions on those at the global IGF. So there's a direct way to have a local discussion and funnel it into this global initiative. And the most important thing about it is that, you know, in addition to being multi-stakeholder, it's bottom up in nature. So it's really, there's no intense hierarchical bureaucratic structure. It's a matter of people coming together and reaching consensus on what they want to discuss, and they won't agree on every single aspect of what they're discussing, but ultimately, you know, we're deciding together what issues are priorities to us and how we want to approach them, and that's how we enter every year at the IGF-USA. And that's also why it's a great way for people that are new to the field to engage, is because it's this ad hoc process where you can come in and just get involved without any permission or anything like that. So I think we want to take some time to allow for any questions, because I'd imagine there are probably some. So for the remainder of the panel, would like to make it as interactive as possible. So I'll just walk the mic around. It's probably the easiest way to do this. So if there are any questions, just raise your hand and we'll. Oh yeah, so the global IGF has a multi-stakeholder advisory group, which is made up of advisors from different stakeholder groups that are appointed by each stakeholder group and voted on, and they make the decisions around what sessions are held at each Internet Governance Forum, and they have a different process than we do at the IGF-USA, where people can draft full, flushed out proposals and submit them along with others, usually from different stakeholder groups, to this process, and then the MEG, or the multi-stakeholder advisory group, looks at the priorities for each year and selects those sessions and tries to make the program and the substance of the global IGF reflective of the issues that people care about, and ensure that it's multi-stakeholder nature. Melinda, do you want to add to that?
Yeah. Does everybody know when we say multi-stakeholder, what we mean, just as a start? And the ones on the MAG, there's governments, civil society, the technical sector, and private sector, right? I got all of them? Did I miss somebody?
Yeah. Governments and IGOs.
IGOs, yeah. Yeah, in addition to this national and regional initiative NRIs, there are also two other ways to participate. There are, so if you have a specific initiative and a topic area that you're passionate about, you could either join a best practice forum or a dynamic coalition. Best practice forum is fairly self-explanatory. A dynamic coalition is a way to explore broader topics. So last year I was part of founding a group, a new dynamic coalition on DNS issues. So we're dealing with specific areas that aren't being addressed in other forum. For example, ICANN or other places like that. Domain name system. So the actual addressing of your names and numbers out there, to type those into your browser, and so we're dealing with issues that haven't been addressed sufficiently, either in other governance forum like ICANN or in the private sector. So, for example, we're looking right now at something called universal acceptance, and what this simply wants to do is say, it doesn't matter what that web address or that email address looks like, how many characters it is, and if those characters are in ASCII, if they're in a Japanese script, an Arabic script, whatever, they should be accessible by anyone from any application, whether it is your email or your web browser, if you're filling out a form online to sign up for something. So you have a couple of different forum at the IGF in addition to the let me just go navigate and find my way and see what I'm like, or you could be very targeted and look specifically at an issue.
Sorry to keep hogging it from you, Dustin. But so youth are not technically a stakeholder group at the IGF, but I do think it's important to note that there is a tract at the IGF specifically for youth voices. So there are panels run by youth. There are sessions that are tailored to youth issues, and those are often proposed by youth groups and specifically by national or regional youth IGF groups. So there's not currently a youth IGF within the US, but there is one in Canada, and it's a really strong group of young people who are both in university and mostly recent graduate, and that's an incredible way to kind of organize yourselves within country or within region, and then take whatever issues you identify or whatever solutions you identify at that level and take it to a global perspective. And the Global Youth Initiative, the Global Youth IGF, is very easy to join. All you do is you say you want to join it, and you get looped into amazing youth advocates from all over the world. And there's a lot of different kind of youth programs at the global level that feed into that, including through the Internet Society. We have a special interest group, a SIG, for youth, that's also looped into the Youth IGF and to a program called Digital Grassroots, which is a grassroots coalition of digital literacy trainers led by young people all over the world. So the IGF Global, Regional, National are all really good ways to organize yourselves, collaborate, and then take those issues from a grassroots level all the way to a global level.
Questions?
So, to preface this conversation, and I don't think anyone on this panel would disagree with me at all here. Consider and mind the cliche, but consider this conversation a safe space. Like any concerns, questions you have about your goals and about what barriers might exist that you are concerned about or wondering, like how can the internet governance community kind of help you tackle and overcome those goals, feel free to bring them up. And kind of on that tone to maybe facilitate some questions on your end. What concerns and questions do you guys have about maybe your goals in tech policy and internet governance generally, and what do you think stands in your way of accomplishing that? Is there a policy area that seems particularly inaccessible? Is it that people are not particularly friendly to network with? Maybe as a couple of ideas. Is there anything that springs to mind for you guys that we as like a panel here and in a smaller group can speak to and offer advice on? Yeah.
My name is Marilyn Cade. Why did you take 4 hours of your time to come today? Because I think that would help all of us. There must have been something that you were interested in. You, I know.
Hi, everybody. I'm Matt Johnson. So one of the things that is really important for the International Trademark Association, and I hate to start it on this note, is the issue of e-commerce and counterfeiting on the internet. And one of the issue areas that we're having, particularly since the passage of the GDPR, another acronym, General Data Protection Regulation from the European Union, is that a lot of the information on the internet is masked on the WHOIS system, for example. And so there's not really much access to information that would help us to fight cybercrime. And so I think our organization is really interested in figuring out ways to engage the community in a way that's balanced to make sure that we can maintain access to this information in some measurable way in order to fight intellectual property theft on the internet. So that's our main reason, I think, for being involved in internet governance issues. Me personally, I just find it very fascinating to talk to youth and to engage with internet governance institutions. I think all of you are working in many different areas, obviously, not only in cybersecurity. And of course, there's always many other issue areas, privacy as well, which is part of the reason why the GDPR became such a big deal. So I'm interested to hear your opinions and to engage with you on this subject.
I came because I like talking about all these questions and sort of getting out of the bubbles that I make for myself around particular things I'm interested in, but also because I feel like I have spent time in other communities that are focused on activism specifically, and I know not everybody here is here to do this for activism. Everybody has different reasons and motivations, but I feel like the community of young people specifically who do political or policy related stuff around digital technologies and internet governance is just, it always feels comparatively not well networked to me. I don't know if this is I'm not cool enough to be at the right parties or whatever, but I'm just excited to get to know people and spend time face to face with people, because we're always all retweeting each other and stuff. And I've been to some Day Zero events, one at Access Now's conference RightsCon, so that was a youth event the day before. It's not an IGF event, but also at IGF in Latin America. And I was I feel I actually thought it was to me it felt more productive than the actual IGF that I went to. And so I was like, we need to do this more. I don't understand exactly why in the US there hasn't been more of stuff like this, but yeah, I think just being here and talking and getting to know each other is a great start.
So one thing you kind of touched on in terms of the networking issues, and I was actually thinking about this earlier today when wondering what to say on this panel, is Twitter is actually really useful for connecting with a community that you, especially if you don't go to a huge amount of events, you're geographically inconveniently located, right? So you can't turn up to every thing on the Hill or all the stuff that goes on in DC or in other cities. Something that I think is so easy to do, and this is me as someone that sits on social media a lot in a personal capacity, is to worry about asking questions or even making comments or jokes online and on Twitter, and then wondering like, oh, if I didn't get like a like or a reply or something, and if I then see this person in public, is this going to be awkward? Am I like struggling to really get into this community because they're not really talking back? Like, these are all anxieties that I've had while working in this space. And I would say that as someone who, as I say, spends a lot of time on social media, when someone like tweets at me, even if it's someone I have no idea who they are or their picture on Twitter is like not them, it's like some sort of avatar or something. Let's say for whatever reason I forget to like or respond or just don't. That doesn't actually mean that I didn't appreciate the interaction. And if someone was to come up to me at an event and be like, hey, I tweeted you about this, like, what did you think? I would never be like, how rude, like, why are they talking to me like that? Like, this isn't high school. Like, it's like, oh, yeah, sure, let's talk about that. Like, I mean, part of my job is to talk to people about that sort of stuff. So in terms of as like a surface level way to get.
For the first time, and the IGF did come in 5-year cycles. So the Tunis Agenda, which was the document agreed to by heads of state, and what that means is it's the equivalent of almost a treaty in terms of practice. It isn't a treaty, but the government, the heads of state who have signed up for it, feel committed to it. So that was what we walked out of Tunis with in 2005. And the forum was called for in the Tunis Agenda as a special project of the Secretary General. So it was authorized for 5 years and then significantly challenged, and the world community really came together and fought to get it reauthorized for a second 5 years. And then we did what's called WSIS Plus 10, which was a world review of the outcome of the World Society on the Information Society. So the IGF now, the global IGF, is chartered for 10 years, which is a major breather in order to be able to affect change. But in the recent years, in the last 2 years, there are major calls for change in the IGF modality, and at the IGF